Okay, guys, so today we're gonna talk about a different theory, and this theory is called cognitive dissonance theory. So first we're gonna start with an Aesop fable. So I believe that we all have heard this fable called The Fox and the Grapes when we were little kids. But just to refresh your memory, I'm gonna kind of briefly describe this fable. So a very hungry fox was trying to reach some grapes honey high on the vine, but he was unable to do so. So instead of admitting his defeat, this fox was like, well, these grapes must be very sour grapes, and they are not desirable at all. And later, this story became an idiom. We all know it, the sour grapes. And we use this idiom to refer to some situation where some individuals they're not able to get something. So instead of admitting their defeat, their failure, these individuals they developed some negative attitude towards their original goals, towards something they cannot have it themselves. And actually, this story actually implies or illustrates the basic idea of this cognitive dissonance theory, which we're gonna talk about today. I'll just leave this story here, and we will come back to this story after we finish discussing or explaining this theory. And let's see whether you guys can make the connections. A second thing I want to mention before we dive into our theory is this is Stockholm Syndrome. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of this syndrome before. But basically, this syndrome describes a situation in which the hostages develop a psychological bonding or some positive feelings with their captors during their captivity. Actually, the name of this syndrome came from a real crime which happened in Stockholm, Sweden, many years ago. I believe it's in 1970s or 1960s. So two robbers they wanted to rob a bank, and during their activity, these two robbers they kidnapped two women from this bank. And these two women, these two victims, they were being, threatened, feared, and abused by these two robbers for 5 days. And surprisingly, these two women developed some bonding and positive feelings, emphasis towards these two robbers, and it even helped them to, help them and also defend it for them. And I even heard one woman even got engaged in one of this criminal later. So later, this Stockholm syndrome was widely used to describe this weird situation where one person is being abused, threatened, and feared by some criminals. But this victim gradually developed some emotional bonding, some connections, or even fall in love with the criminals. So, why I want to mention this syndrome, it is because this strange situation or this strange psychological change actually can be explained by this cognitive dissonance theory. And pretty much like the fable, the Aesop's fable, I'm not gonna go deep into this syndrome right now. I'll just explain the theory first, and then we're gonna come back to this syndrome and to see if you guys can, explain this syndrome using the theories. So the basic assumption of this theory is that as humans, we all tend to seek consistencies in our beliefs and actions. And when you have two conflicting thoughts at the same time, or when you engage in a behavior which is contradictory against your beliefs, you tend to feel a sense of discomfort. And this sense of discomfort, we call it cognitive dissonance. So by definition, the cognitive dissonance occurs when a person has inconsistent attitude and behaviors. And because of this inconsistency, this person would experience stress. Let's say when our behavior aligns with our attitudes, is pretty consistent with what we think. So they are same, they are consistent with each other. In this situation, we feel very comfortable because we experience something called consonance or consistency between my attitude and my behavior. Let me give you one concrete example. So let's say I'm a member of animal protection associations, and I hold such a strong belief that we need to do something to protect the animals, their lives, and their rights. And to achieve this goal, I became a vegetarian, and I won't eat meat anymore, and I won't wear any, animals' fur. So in this situation, my action, my behavior is consistent with my attitude, and I would feel extremely comfortable. And in contrast situation is I hold inconsistent attitude and beliefs. Let's say I hold a strong belief that we should respect animals, protect their rights, and save their lives. At the same time, I'm also so obsessed with meat. I cannot live without meat. And so in this situation, I experience something called cognitive dissonance because there is inconsistency between my attitude and my behavior. They don't match. So in other words, when we have contradictory or conflicting attitudes and behaviors, we experience this cognitive dissonance. And this is a very discomfortable state. And we want to do something to reduce this tension, to reduce the struggle inside us, to resolve this dissonance. So this is kind of the basic idea of this theory, and the key term of this theory is this cognitive dissonance. What is it, and how does it happen? So to show you guys an example, a media example about this dissonance or this cognitive dissonance, I'm going to show you guys a video clip from Game of Thrones. So please play the first media video below and then come back to our slides. Okay, welcome back. So we can see that in this video, we clearly see Sansa, this girl, right? She is experiencing enormous cognitive dissonance because her father got killed by this king. But at the same time, she was forced to marry the king, to appraise the king, and claim that his father is a traitor. So in this case, her behavior does not align with her attitudes or affections towards his father. So clearly, she is struggling and she is experiencing this cognitive dissonance. And in this slide, I'm going to talk about different relationships that attitudes and actions could have. As humans coming from different backgrounds, we all hold a set of our own attitudes, worldviews, and behave in a way that we believe is correct. And sometimes our mental attitudes and personal actions align with each other, and sometimes they clash. And so I'm going to talk about 3 different types of relationships between our attitudes and behaviors. The first one, we call it irrelevant relationship. And this irrelevant relationship happens when our cognition and action are unrelated to each other, or one is unlikely to have any influence on another. Let's say, for example, you want to get a good grade for this week's assignment. That is one of your cognition, or we can say it is a goal you want to achieve. On the other hand, you are wearing, let's say, a hoodie today at home. So these two things, they are totally unrelated with one another. So in other words, wearing a hoodie is less likely to affect your grade. So we see that these two things, your cognition to achieve a good grade for this week's assignment, and your behavior of wearing a hoodie today, they're unrelated. They have an irrelevant relationship. The second one, we call it a consonant relationship. That is, your attitudes and actions that are consistent with each other. So get back to, getting this good grade example. So let's say you still want to achieve a good grade for this week's assignment. And that is your cognition again. So to achieve this goal, you may want to start it really hard, or you may want to, read the lectures, watch the lectures again and again to ensure that you understand everything. So in this situation, your behavior aligns with your cognition, which is to get a good grade. In this situation, you are experiencing a consonant relationship between your cognition and your behaviors. And in this case, I bet you will feel very comfortable because you are on your way to achieve a very good grade for this week's assignment. And third one, we say it is a dissonant relationship. That is, your cognitions or your actions, they are not consistent with each other. They are contradictory with each other. So get back to our getting good grade example. Would it be an action or would it be a behavior which would cause a dissonant relationship with this with your cognition of getting a good grade? Well, there are too many ways to screw up your grade, right? So let's say you can sleep all the way to the deadline of the homework. Or you can drink or party all the way to the deadline of your homework. And in this case, even though your cognition is, I want to get a good grade, but your behaviors are of not any help to achieve this goal or to be consistent with your cognition. So in this situation, you may experience some struggles here because your cognitions and your behaviors, they're not consistent.